Okay, guys, today we're going to do our last section on crimes against the person, and this section is going to focus on different sexual assault crimes. And I know for some of us this can be a more sensitive topic, so if you have any questions at any point about anything that's in today's lesson and you don't want to post them somewhere where everyone can see, you can feel free to email me. But what we're going to look at here, guys, are some of the different types of sexual assault crimes. And when we talk about sexual assault, it's sort of like homicide in that that's sort of a broad term that's used, and then there are a bunch of different specific crimes that would fall under it. Um, a lot of times in states, we'll see this range from something like a verbal threat all the way up to unwanted sexual contact, which can include rape. So you're not going to see you probably won't see someone charged with just sexual assault without something more specific that goes with it. Um, all right. So the one that we tend to think of right off the bat when we think of sexual assault crimes is rape. And in Pennsylvania, the elements are pretty simple. It's sexual penetration without consent. It can be aggravated rape if a weapon or some other type of force is used. So it doesn't have to be something that occurs with a weapon or force. It can just be sexual penetration without consent. And it's important to note that because you do see sometimes situations where you have someone that's unable to give consent. Maybe the person is somehow handicapped or passed out or something like that, and they're unable to give consent. So even if you don't necessarily use force, you don't necessarily have to attack the person or threaten the person. As long as you do not have that person's consent, then this is going to constitute rape. And the big question, guys, is how do we determine if the victim has actually consented? And this is something that has sort of changed over time. And if you look at the law through the decades, you'll see a definite shift. And generally speaking, it used to be that unless the person says no, then you have consent. And we've seen a big swing away from that where we're not necessarily looking for someone to say no, but instead we're looking, did this person say yes? All right. So that's really what the shift has been. Um, and so again, we're not really looking for a definite no, we're more looking for affirmation. And there are a couple different circumstances where the court has found that you cannot claim to have consent of the victim. And these include where the victim is unconscious, where the victim is mentally incompetent, or where the victim is under the impaired judgment by drugs or alcohol. So if any of these three situations are present, you're not going to have consent. And guys, this can count as well if this is somebody that you have an established relationship with. And again, these are all things that a jury would have to hear, or in cases of rape, maybe you would have it just be a judge. But you can't just say, well, this is a person that I've had a relationship with and they've never had a problem with having sexual intercourse before. That doesn't just necessarily give you the right to have sex with them whenever you want. So if you have a person that has maybe consented to sexual intercourse 10 times before, right, and all of a sudden they're unconscious or they're drunk to the point that they can't consent, their judgment is impaired, you cannot assume that on that 11th time they would give you consent. Right? So in that case, you can't just say, well, they've never had a problem with it before. We look at it on a case by case basis. Now, the judge might look at the totality of the circumstance and say, okay, maybe you weren't as malicious as someone that just like encounters someone they've never met before. And that might be taken into consideration, but it's not going to provide you with a total defense. Both men and women can be guilty. I don't know why there's a slash between the word women and the word can, but just ignore that. Both men and women can be guilty of rape. And a lot of times when we think of rape, we think of a man who is the perpetrator and a woman who's the victim. And again, statistically speaking, that is a lot of what happens, but that doesn't have to make up 100% of the cases. So you can see it go both ways here. Okay, guys. The next one we're going to talk about is statutory rape. And statutory rape is the one that a lot of students are a little bit confused about. And again, this is different depending on what state you're in. So in some states, the age of majority for sexual intercourse is considered to be 18. That's the age of consent. And you'll hear people say things a lot like, was this person 18 yet? That is not the case in Pennsylvania, and every state can have their own rules about this. Pennsylvania has sort of a tiered approach, okay? If you are less than 13 years old, you cannot consent to sexual intercourse. Legally, you cannot consent. It doesn't matter if you are a very mature 12-year-old. It doesn't matter if you know exactly what it is, what you're doing, if you do it willingly. If you are under the age of 13, then legally you cannot consent to sexual intercourse. If a person who is older than you has sex with you, a person who is 13 years or older, then they are going to be considered to have raped you. Guys, this is statutory rape, okay? This means that you committed the crime regardless of your intent. And we talked about this way back when we started doing crimes against the person. Most of the time for a crime, we're looking for intent, but a few certain crimes do not require intent. Statutory rape is one of them. So you could have sexual intercourse with someone that falls within one of these age groups, and it could be a complete accident or a complete mistake. You might think the person is way older than they are. In some states, if the person lies to you, that still does not provide you with a total defense. So you have to be really careful here when you're looking at people that are in these age ranges, sorry. All right, so here's where it gets a little bit dicey, all right? If you are between the ages of 13 and 15, and again, this is in Pennsylvania, if you're between the ages of 13 and 15, you can legally consent to sexual intercourse with someone who is up to 4 years older than you. Not 4 years older than the age range, but 4 years older than you. So a 13-year-old can consent to having sexual intercourse with anyone that is up through the age of 17. All right. Now, the courts will actually look at the dates of your birthdays. So if it's 4 years and 2 days older, it's going to be statutory rape. Okay. And again, guys, you're still considered to be guilty even if the person lies about their age. And again, I know this is sort of a touchy subject, but it is something that makes up a lot of the crimes that we see here in the United States. And also, you guys are getting to be an age where, maybe you fall into one of these age ranges. And I just want you to know what your rights are if something were to happen to you. Okay. Um, like I said, they will actually look at your birthdays and make sure that you are within 4 years. And if it's anything over 4 years, one day over 4 years, it's considered statutory rape. And if you want, you can press charges. And a lot of times what we see here, guys, are we see parents pressing charges. So you may have a 15-year-old and a 20-year-old, and they may agree to have sex and the parents find out. And that's a lot of the cases that we see. Once you turn 16, you are considered to be of the age of consent in Pennsylvania, and you can consent to having sex with anyone of any age above you, not below you. All right. So, guys, that's sexual assault. And like I said, the big ones are rape and statutory rape. If you have any questions, let me know. Put a comment in. Well, if you don't want everyone to see, don't put a comment. If you would like to email me, that's fine. All right, guys, have a good one.